back to the Unleashed. I'm your host, Jared Beeler. In January, times started getting tough, and I was wondering what exactly was going on. And I'm going to do a video here on some important topic. You guys have known that I've been talking that this year is a huge possible sign for the rapture and the start of the tribulation for countless numbers. Not only that, but I believe the Jewish timeline would be more accurate. So out of the pick, for it being 73 years to follow the prophecy of the tribulation happening between 70 and 80 years. I believe this year lines up with that, so I've definitely kept a close eye. You guys know how I've watched for spring and everything else, the seriousness of it, and you know how I have been talking about economic collapse in World War III and the start of the tribulation and the signs as being able to seem possible. And you know that I talked about the coronavirus recently, said that if it gets bad enough, it will be the tribulation. It's the starting point, and then we finally have a lockdown. The very lockdown I've been looking for the whole time on anything that would give a significant lockdown on what year the tribulation and the rapture would start. And I believe that we may have that. But in January, times started getting tough with the neighbor situation that moved in, and it just kept getting more rambunctious and awful. Really was bothering me, and it was up to the point that I was going to go into my property management and tell them that I was moving out at the end of February. I didn't have any plans for where I was going to go, but I wanted to get out. And my sister ended up talking to him and stuff, and they gave me a little bit more time. In the process of that, it only got worse, like instantly, for about 2 weeks, up into the breaking point with stuff happening at work and things like that, that finally pushed me over the edge. And I was thinking this was just some bad stuff coming against me, and I wasn't sure. But now I feel a total revelation. This is me getting my feathers fluffed, and my Jonah call, as in the storm getting worse, as Jonah's going away until he gets thrown out of the ship and the storm calms instantly, because that's exactly what's happened. In November sometime, I was thinking about how I'm almost at a year at this job, and I'm going to get a couple weeks vacation. I was going to go see some family, and I was excited about it, but also the time that we're in and how serious I think that it is. I'm like, only having a week, if I was going to go talk to my friends or something like that, it's just not enough. And I went active in 2014 big time when I left my house and moved to go warn my 4 friends at the time of the impending end of the world, start of the tribulation, and the nearness of the rapture and stuff like that, hopefully to lead them to God and tell them the truth about everything. The quest continued on. I ended up talking to all of them, and then eventually started this channel in 2017, where now I've talked to thousands of people, and multiple jobs that I've had where I've talked to people over that course. But I was thinking about in November that if I got a chance, that maybe I would do that again. I didn't realize I was about to get my chance. So I go in after a hard day, and I'm talking to God, and I go into work, and I'm like, I just don't think I can do this. And I talk to my boss, where he instantly helps me out because he really likes me, and he allowed me to go home and take some time off. And in that process of the nonsense that I was dealing with my neighbors, I ended up in my property management place, and I told them that I'd be out at the end of the month, which is exactly what I had planned in January anyways, but now I just had less time to do it. So I'm like, what just happened? But before I went into my job, I was praying to God, and I'm like, if this is real, if this is some kind of sign that I need to get out of here, and the reason why I'm saying that is because I've been keeping track of the coronavirus and stuff like that. It's the first sign of pestilence, or the 4th horse, death, and if it gets bad enough, having a little bit of time to go warn all the people that I know one more time, give them a little refresher course on knowing Jesus and giving their life to Him, especially if they end up and find themselves in the tribulation. It's the only thing that's going to save them, that I would do that. And that's exactly what's been working its way, and I didn't know it. I put some stuff in storage, and I started thinking about it, and that morning when I was talking to God, I'm like, when should I be out of here? Like the 1st of March, April? What's my timeline on this? I'm like, because I feel like I'm getting pushed in this direction. And it just instantly happened in 1st of March, which is exactly what I was planning on doing anyways when I got really bothered and I was going to talk to him. So it's very interesting how it comes back around like that. But I'm like, okay, like, I don't know where I'm going to go. Do you want me out of here for a job situation? Do I just need to go another place and start talking to people about God again? Or what's the situation? And it was well, it was over the weekend or whatever. I was sitting in the chair and it was early in the morning. I think it was Thursday morning. And while I was sitting there, I did hear from him, and he said that I know what to do. It's the Holy Spirit or whatever, and he told me that I know what to do, and the only thing that I know what to do is what I had planned originally already, which was pack up everything and get rid of the house and get rid of the job and go back out and warn everybody I know one more time face to face and all the people I care about because time's seriously up. And I'm like, if that's what you're pointing me towards, then that's what I'm going to do. And but I'm like, how severe is this? Because like, I mean, I'm stepping out in faith here. I don't know what it is. And I believe that I got my answer Monday night. And that's exactly what we're going to discuss right now. Because I did get activated again to go out and talk to people, so that's exactly what I'm going to do, and I believe that I got the answer Monday night. I'm going to read something to you guys, and I'd ask that you share this far and wide as far as you can. I'm going to break it down while I'm reading it, show you guys why I believe it has extreme credentials. And we'll talk about it as I go through it. It's kind of a long read, so it'll be about 15 or 20 minutes. But I want to show you guys what I'm talking about, the seriousness and why I believe I got an answer on why I need to be out of here absolutely right now, and why I only have a short time possibly to go warn people, because it's all lining up like never before. Okay, here we go. Let's get started. I got a story here that I read Monday night. Corona en masse. Chinese intelligence officer reveals true magnitude of China's fake coronavirus crisis. February 13, 2020. Okay. To free the Chinese people, under the headline, "For the good and general welfare of the Chinese people in the world, permission is hereby granted to copy, quote, or reproduce this article with a link back in full and in part with the hope that this and these revelations will help to free Chinese populace and the citizens of Hong Kong from the evil that has befallen them," okay? And then I'm going to get right into this. I'm going to read what he has to say, okay? And this might be shocking, but this is exactly what we've been looking for, and I believe it's definitely the sign that everything's about to happen right now, and why the urgency of what's going on in my life, and why I needed to get out of here, because I didn't know this until, like I say, Monday night, and I'd already given up my job and stuff like that, and told them that I was going to be leaving. Here we go. I'm a senior Chinese military intelligence officer, and I know the truth about the coronavirus outbreak. It's far worse than media is telling you. I'm a Chinese citizen in Wuhan, occupies or perhaps occupied a high-ranking position in military intelligence. I am also a member of the Chinese Communist Party. As a senior officer near the top of the party, I have access to a great deal of classified information. I have been involved in many top-secret government projects. I have a doctorate from leading university in Western country, which is why I am able to write my account in English. I have information that I believe could lead to the overthrow of my government. It is also relevant to billions of people outside China, all of whom now in existential peril. It will not surprise you to hear that if my identity were to be revealed, my life would be in grave danger, as would those of my wife and son. I ask you to respect the fact that I have stripped out discount all facts that would make it easy to identify me. By now you will be familiar with the recent outbreak of 2019 in NCOV, also known as NCP, simply coronavirus. You will have heard that it originated in Wuhan, an industrial city in China, and that it came from an animal, most likely a bat or a pangolin. This was sold in a wild animal market. You will have been told that this influenza-like illness that can, in several cases, cause pneumonia, respiratory failure, and death. Finally, you may have heard that although the disease is highly infectious, it is dangerous only to an elderly or to those who have compromised immune system. The official lethality rate is approximately 2% or so, which isn't too bad. All of that is a bunch of lies concocted by the Chinese state with the tacit support of the U.S. deep state and its friends in the European Union, Russia, and Australia, and spread by the docile media in all of those countries. Let me start by telling you that the world does not operate the way you think it does. Although countries like the U.S. and China vie for global dominance, the competition is restricted to certain limited areas. In most ways, the two countries are more interested in cooperation so that they can stop other competing countries and gaining more power. They also have shared interest in keeping real power out of the hands of their ordinary citizens. To this end, they have many different mechanisms by which they control the overwhelming majority of their media outlets. The Americans in particular have perfected the art of creating up divisions between their two main parties, which are designed to hide the fact that both serve the same masters. Okay, this is totally true, all right? The whole thing's a charade. I've been saying that the whole time. But behind closed doors and everything like that, there is a global connection, whether it's deep state or whatever else they know, and they have an agenda, and most of it goes back to Illuminati and Satanism and stuff like that, all right? So this is very true, all right? These same nations also possess technology that is far more advanced than you can imagine, and which is kept carefully hidden from the public view, all right? This is also true. Secret space program and stuff like that, there are technologies that are so far advanced, thousands and thousands of years through fallen angels and things like that, all right? So what he's talking about is real. This includes advanced artificial intelligence capable of undermining and deciding any election in the world, biological and chemical agents that can manipulate and control the thinking patterns and behaviors of citizens. We've heard something about this before. Them talking about how they've worked or have different flu vaccines that would manipulate somebody that they would lose their religion or give up their faith. So it's very interesting. Biological and chemical agents that can manipulate and control thinking patterns and behaviors of citizens to terrifying degrees. Highly sophisticated manipulation techniques using hypnotic practices entirely unknown to the public, and other things that I will not go into now. I totally believe in that, especially from the Hitler Third Reich and stuff like that, the stuff that they were testing, using demons to put in people for the same effects as hypnosis and things like that, especially when you're putting in different levels or breaks inside people. This is how you create sleeper cells and stuff like that that can be activated. So it's very true on all that stuff. My point is that the great nations do not compete so much as work together. Their principal goal is to shield the truth, workings of the world from the uninitiated public. Let me return to the virus. Last year, a large-scale anti-government protests erupted in Hong Kong. We all know about that, okay? The Standing Committee of the Chinese Communist Party considered these to be a grave threat to the integrity and stability of the motherland. The U.S. government and EU both knew that the Chinese were secretly working on a biological agent that was supposed to make the protesters docile and obedient. Just kind of like Nazi camps, fluoridating the water and stuff like that, all right? Without going into detail, I worked on that project. We tried to develop a sort of spray that could be dispersed from helicopters or drones, and that would lead to mental retardation and behavioral change. Naturally, as Hong Kong is one of the most open and international cities in the world, the party decided that it was too risky to release the agents in Hong Kong without first testing it. For this, it needed a great number of human guinea pigs. Two groups were identified for this. First, we rounded up a large number of so-called Islamic radicals in Zhejiang province and took them to what we called training camps. We had already been using these camps for human experimentation for several years, but the Hong Kong protests meant that we redoubled our efforts. We exposed the inmates to various alpha experimental agents, and these were odorless and invisible. The subjects were not aware that they were taking part in any medical trials. The resulting high rate of cancer, premature dementia, suicidal depressions, and death by organ failures could easily be suppressed as the camps are located in very remote parts of the motherland. Once the initial experiments had yielded a beta agent, it was transported to the Hubei province, where it was deployed in a special military testing facility outside the city of Wuhan. This was not even a particularly well-kept secret. The existence of this facility has been reported in international news. Even the fact that it is located close to the wild animal market is known fact. By then, our president had already introduced a social credit system that allowed us to identify disloyal, counter-revolutionary, and bourgeois elements in our society using the social credit scores, which are taken from the online activity, electronic shopping behavior, and reports from informers in civil society. We selected some of the worst offenders. These included human rights lawyers, activists, Christians, homosexuals, artists, intellectual people who speak foreign languages, and other undesirables, all right? This goes to show you what communism's like, all right? They don't want anything that comes against them or what they're about, all right? Once these troublemakers had been collected and placed in the testing facilities, aka like FEMA camps of their own, or death camps we could call it, we exposed them to the agent, which is a biochemical in nature and spread in an invisible aerosol akin to certain viruses. Already here we're starting to see something, the aerosol spray, how it spreads, some of the stuff talking about the coronavirus, okay? We're starting to see what this guy's talking about, how there's a similarity to this and what they were working on, all right? It had to do with the Hong Kong riots that we all know about, and how they wanted to quell that whole situation, but they didn't know how to, especially on the whole world stage, because they couldn't go in there and do mass genocide, all right? Initial results were encouraging. We saw significant cognitive decline and reduction in higher mental processing facilities. Essentially, our undesirables were becoming mildly mentally disabled, which is precisely the effects we wanted to produce in order to pacify the restive population of Hong Kong. Unfortunately, it quickly became apparent that the agent also had other effects. About 1 week after the retardation center, our subjects developed major anxiety and panic attacks. Eventually, they developed symptoms akin to those of paranoid schizophrenics, and at that point, their bodies rapidly deteriorated. They developed massive internal bleeding, the walls of their arteries dissolved, and they bled out of their eyes, orifices and tissues disintegrated. To put it more in a direct Western manner, they started to melt. Death usually occurred through multiple organ failures. This was preceded by at least 5 days of severe agony, which could not be alleviated by painkillers. It was at this time that I first violated our protocol. One subject, an elderly lady who had published defamatory cartoons of our president, begged me for death with such intent that I took pity and shot her. I was reprimanded, but unfortunately the complaint was dropped. When I agreed to reimburse the cost of the bullet, I swore to myself never again to show such unnecessary emotion. We decided that our agent was unusable, as far as it was far too destructive for our purposes. We wanted the population of Hong Kong to submit to us, that we didn't want to exterminate it. Naturally, our American friends had been taking an interest in our work and asked for a sample for their own research and testing purposes. They hinted that they wished to use it to resolve certain difficulties in Venezuela. We all know about that, what was going on down there, and how they wanted to put in that guy the CIA did anyways, all right? And it's the CIA that's asking for this. Normally, we would have agreed as we maintained friendly relations with CIA, but given the extreme toxic nature of the agent, we declined. This, as it turned out, was a grave mistake. The CIA was convinced that we had developed something very powerful and wanted to keep it to ourselves. They offered a great deal of money to one of our researchers. Foolishly, he agreed to sell them a specimen. We found out just in time for the handover and tried to stop it from happening. In the ensuing shootout, don't bother to look for it, in parentheses, in the news, it was never reported anywhere. Several dozen people were killed. More importantly, however, the agent escaped. The shootout took place at a wild animal market, which has been reported, and it's in the location of the animal to human transmission that started the outbreak. But of course, there was no such transmission. It was just the location where the CIA was supposed to receive and seal the sealed vial containing the agent. The vial shattered when it was dropped by the trader who had agreed to sell it to the Americans. By now I understand you will be skeptical. If I really am who I say I am, why would I be sharing this information on the internet? Let me assure you that I am no friend of the Western system of governance. I love my motherland, and I am loyal to the Communist Party. You can tell this guy's brainwashed. It has lifted hundreds of millions of my compatriots out of squalor and poverty. However, I'm also a human being, and I have a conscience. Most importantly, I have a wife and a son. Once we realized the agent had escaped and started to spread, we swiftly put all of Wuhan into lockdown. I was one of those tasked to manage the fallout of the contamination. Take a break here. Continuing on. Of course, we cannot keep such a huge undertaking secret, so we decided to order our state media to report that the coronavirus had broken out in Wuhan. In reality, of course, there is no coronavirus. It was all made up. It was one of my colleagues who came up with the genius idea of pretending that people with a common flu suffered from coronavirus. This allowed us to hide the true nature of the disease. Let me explain. It is currently flu season in China when we realized that we could no longer control the spread of the agent. We sent our men to all the hospitals and instructed the doctors to diagnose every case of common flu as coronavirus. All right? All the people you're hearing about on the news and stuff like that just had the flu, they were told that they had the coronavirus. Meanwhile, they're going to be hiding the numbers. All right? It's a cover-up. We came up with a new name, 2019 NCOV, and handed out fact sheets that described a made-up illness. The results of the decision was that tens of thousands of individuals who were simply suffering from cold or flu were now diagnosed as having a mysterious coronavirus that, although infectious, was not often lethal. While this frightened the public, it allowed us to push the narrative that this disease was not that deadly. It also gave us time to prepare for the catastrophe that was sure to come by the imposing a lockdown in Wuhan and other cities in the Hubei province. Okay? You have not heard this in the news, and given the size of Wuhan with its population of 11 million, it is not known even to many of the residents, but within days, thousands upon thousands were affected, and before long, they suffered the agonizing deaths that I have recently already described. Within a week, there were so many corpses that we did not know what to do with them. So we ordered the surviving social credit prisoners to drive the bodies into the countryside and bury them in mass graves. But it was very difficult to keep this activity secret, and we could not even keep up as there were so many corpses. We planted a story that 5 million residents had fled Wuhan. In reality, of course, many of those people had died from the agent. Okay, I want to stop right there. Today I was reading some stuff, and it was about the news, all right? And I was getting into the comments, okay? And I was talking about the 5 million people that the world knows about and stuff like that, all right? There's millions of people went missing instantly, and they said that they left or whatever else. I was listening to some arguments and other people talking, all right? This is a fact. Right before they even put it on quarantine, 5 million people escaped Wuhan, right? But even within the comments, there was a few that were trying to do disinformation and say some things, and some others came in and corrected them, and they told them, hey, that only counts for about 500,000. What about the other 4.5 million? We still don't have any active records or numbers or anything like that on where they went. What the heck's going on? However, now that's true. That's something that we know about. That is real. Meanwhile, this story that I'm reading describes exactly what happened to them. They're all already dead, and they've been buried in mass graves. That's extremely startling, okay, because it already puts the numbers into the low millions. The kind of stuff they're looking for that starts getting very tribulational, okay, because once you start getting into the higher millions, all right, that will be the tribulation in the timeline and the period that we're looking at, and it will also be a time marker, a time stamper, you could say, for the whole thing breaking out, which looks like this year, okay? Let me continue on. I was working around the clock, helping to orchestrate this cover-up. When I think back to my actions now, I feel great shame. At the time, I still believed that I was fighting for my motherland and that the rule of the party was right and just, but deep down I had already begun to have doubts. My faith in the party was shaken even more deeply when I learned what had happened to Dr. Li Wenliang. Dr. Li Wenliang, doctor who warned about the coronavirus outbreak, dies after being infected by the virus, all right? Whistleblower who was confronted by police becomes latest victim of the deadly outbreak. Dr. Whelan Ling was one of the few doctors who refused falsely to diagnose flu patients with the coronavirus. All right. As a punishment, he was sent to help transport dead bodies to mass graves. The expectation was that he would be infected with the agent and die an agonizing death, but to our great surprise, he did not contract the disease. You have, of course, read that he died of coronavirus. You have been misinformed. The sergeant of the People's Armed Police injected him with a mixture of heroin and mercury that caused his lungs to deflate. When I found out about this, I became unsure whether or not I was doing the right thing. While I believe that it is appropriate for a government to rule with a severe hand, I do not think it was right to kill Dr. Lee. He was a compassionate and kind man, and he cared about the patients. How can a motherland not benefit from having such a doctor? All right, I don't want to stop right there. This doctor that we know about that died, and on news is coronavirus, okay? Show a picture of him here with his family, right? Here's another hotspot to giving this major credentials, okay? Notice what he said. He said they sent him to his death because he didn't want to tell the fake truth about it being a coronavirus, but it was actually something far worse, all right? And they sent him out to help move the bodies, thinking that he would catch it and die. To their surprise, the writer, who's not a Christian, all right? Obviously not. He's a communist, and he's in the Chinese party. Doesn't even realize what he's saying when he does this, which gives it more credentials to the whole thing being real. It's already a sensational story as it is. And when you want to get truth, or if you want to pass anything by, there are certain rules you have to follow by. Otherwise, it is a true story. And I'm pretty good at finding this stuff out and looking into it. The point is when they sent him out there, he's moving the bodies around like they wanted him to, but he doesn't die, so they have to assassinate him, which is what they do, and he ends up dying. Why is this important to me? Because way after this, or recently after this, we find out that the man is a Christian, all right, and he loves God. And what do you think this guy's doing when he's out there talking to these people that are dying or about to die? He's talking to them about Jesus, okay, in Chinese, but he's talking to them. And what happens? Exactly what I've talked about before. If you're on a mission for God, or if he's using you or anything like that, you become invincible, all right? God decides when it's time to come home. And ultimately it was decided, but for that time, even to their astonishment, he was immune to this virus. There's no reason to add that in. There's no connection here with that. And there would be no point, especially in telling a sensational story as it is, which gives it very amounts of merit here that this is completely accurate on what's going on. And this guy was saved by God himself in the process of doing this, and that's why they had to get rid of him. So it's another sign right here that this is completely a true story, and it's something that I wanted to point out. All right, let's see here. I shared my concerns with my wife, but she convinced me that I should not say anything to my superiors. She said that it was too dangerous and that they valued loyalty above everything else, and that I would only find trouble if I admitted my doubts to their practices. She also pointed out that we benefited from priority medical treatment. As senior officials, we received regular supplies of high, sophisticated hazmat masks that are only known technology that can prevent infection. She implored me to think of our son, who was still small. If I spoke out and we were caught, our lives would be at risk. Around the same time, it became clear that the agent was entirely beyond our control. It was spreading like wildfire throughout Hubei province and beyond, infecting tens of millions and causing them all to die. All right, you're already looking at mass explosion in the millions of deaths. All right. I understand that what I just said is difficult to believe because you've been told that there have only been about 50,000 infections and far fewer deaths, but these are the influenza infections that have been falsely passed off as a non-existent coronavirus. You're only hearing about people with the flu, which is totally fake because it's not really the coronavirus at all. They're doing it all to mask the whole thing. The agent is far more contagious than that, and his fatality rate is unlike the coronavirus. It's not 2%. No, its fatality rate is 100%. Nobody recovers from it. Everybody who contracts it dies, and a lot of people are contracting it. Hubei province lies in ruins. The various travel restrictions and lockdowns that have been imposed were not created to stop the spread of the agent. None of them can stop it. No embargoes, no face masks, hand sanitizers, but to stop the survivors from seeing the catastrophe with their own eyes. And part of the greatest cover-up in human history, the hiding of the deaths of tens of millions. Very soon, Hubei province will be no more than a giant mortuary, and the truth will come out. For me, the turning point came when the party told yet another lie, and that lie was too dreadful even for me to accept. You may have heard that China built a new hospital called Hu Shishan Hospital in Wuhan in order to provide additional quarantine and isolation faculties for infected patients. You may have heard that they built it in only 10 days. That too is a lie. Sure, they did build something in 6 days, but it was not a hospital. The true nature of the building was considered top secret. Initially, I was naive enough to believe that the party was demonstrating a compassion, care for the people. But then my superiors sent me to Hu Shishan. I was shown around the installation by military police officers called Corporal Meng. This is not his real name, in parentheses. It was there that I saw the truth. As I have mentioned, the only way to protect myself from the agent is by wearing a special protective mask that is entirely unlike those available commercially. Even medical professionals do not have access to this. It is available only in biomedical warfare research, and it contains extremely advanced technology. These masks need to be kept at a particular temperature to offer full protection and lose their effectiveness very quickly. As I have already said, one of the benefits of my position was that both my family and I had access to regular supplies, which is why we were safe when compared to civilians, doctors, and even lower-level government officials, all of whom who wore utterly inefficient surgical masks in the misguided beliefs that they would protect them. And so, wearing this special equipment, I went to Hoshishan with Corporal Meng. Whatever you want to call that place, it's not a hospital. Sure, the entrance looks like a hospital, and in the ward at the front of the complex, there are what appear to be normal medical beds. There are thousands of infected patients lie, all of them in early stages of the disease. I walked along those long white corridors next to Corporal Meng, his angular face dispassionate in the military fatigues, and I saw hundreds upon hundreds of identical hospital beds in which squirmed the terrified and diseased inhabitants of Wuhan. Their cries and pleas haunt me in the long nights in which I now am unable to sleep. This was merely the beginning. Eventually, the corporal took me to the rear of this front section, and there locked metal gates led to what he called the middle section. The patients in the front are unaware of the existence. It is there that more advanced cases are kept in what most clearly resemble a mental asylum. Immediately upon entering this part of Hushishin, I was struck by the dim lighting and the stench of vomit and human waste. Here, the unfortunates roaming freely, their minds gradually disintegrating in endless panic attacks and psychotic episodes. Here, too, were there no more doctors, merely gorilla-faced men in black uniforms who belonged to some secret branch of the military police I had never heard of. They appeared to have been selected for their cruelty, and they degraded the patients in the most sadistic manner. Many of the inmates had regressed to childlike states and lay on the floor weeping like infants and begged for compassion that they did not receive. There was cruel pleasure in their eyes of these thugs, and they brutalized them unfortunates. They beat them with batons, sprayed pepper spray into their eyes, and kicked them with their steel-capped boots. And I was from military intelligence. The Guard did not even attempt to hide their activities. They even invited me to join. In every way, they treated me as one of them. Yes, one of them. I stood in the gray staff bathroom of Hushashan, looked into the cheap mirror, and asked myself, is this really what you are? Or you really like them? But the violence was not merely an expression of sadism. For the poor inmates were not there to be cared for. They were there to work. There was one more set of doors, and beyond them lay the corporal called the Corps, and it was there that I saw that piles and piles of dead bodies stacked on top of one another all the way to the ceiling. There were men, women, and children, elderly, toddlers, rich and poor, beautiful, mishap, proud and humble. They were all there dead. Our agents made no distinction between any of them. I gasped when the corporal led me to the Corps. I cannot count how many there were, but it was many, many thousands. And in the midst of the piles of corpses was a kind of path that I heard a roaring sound in the distance. The miserable patients from the middle section picked up the dead and carried and dragged them away into the dark, even as the guards beat them with truncheons. It took me a little while before I grasped what was happening, and I simply could not believe what lay at the end of the path of the Corps. It was an enormous furnace with great fires roaring within. One by one, their minds destroyed and their bodies twisted. The dying men and women carried corpses to the furnace, and they cast them inside in doomed attempt to hide the dreadful truth. I saw several of them collapse from exhaustion, only from their lifeless bodies to be added to the mountains of corpses on both sides. In a seemingly endless line that went, their emaciated bodies clad in gray overalls, their backs bent under the weight and their dreadful cargo. Many howled and groaned in terror, and their voices joined in a sorrowful cacophony that lingered over the roar of the fires. In a deep shock, I stared at the boundless horror before me. Beside me stood Corporal Mang, his freshly shaved face as emotionless as before. When I turned to face him, he looked at me. His mouth smiled, but his eyes did not. We used the energy to operate, Hushashani said. We saved the state considerable resources in the way, and look. He waved at the gallery of the dead. There are so many of them you could almost describe it as renewable energy. He laughed and waved his hand in this strangely camp gesture. All right, they're burning the bodies and using it for energy to keep running the place as a fuel source. That's what he's saying. I stood speechless and stared at the interface scenes before me. Men in black uniforms screamed like demons, and the wretches who were disposing of the corpses for them. They stripped the dead of anything that they had value, jewelry, cash, clothing, and tossed these items into enormous piles next to the furnace. When I asked the corporal what would be done with these items, they said that they would use to pay for the health care expenses incurred by the patients staying at Hushashin. This is really sounding like some Nazi stuff right here. I vomited in the toilet when I flushed, and it came out of the stall. Corporal Mang stood by the door and looked at me. His face was blank as before, but in his eyes I thought I registered a very faint trace of contempt. You were 10 years my senior, the look said, but you were soft. I thanked him for his service and went home. When I arrived, I saw that I had received hundreds of updates on the encrypted device the party uses to communicate to insiders. The news were unimaginably grim. The state legal and economic commissions had allocated funds from the construction of a dozen facilities like Hoshishin all throughout China. The agent had spread not only to every single province of the motherland, but to most other nations in the world. Fortunately, we had an agreement in place with other governments. They agreed to pretend that the infections were due to the coronavirus. They were just as worried as we were that the panic might break out in their own countries. The Americans in particular were terrified that the S&P 500 might decline. This, they said, would be unacceptable in an election year, so we can count on their full support. Of course, the World Health Organization also helped us for a long time. The only issue with WHO was that we have been locked in a contest with the Americans about who bribes them more. They released all sorts of sophisticated misinformation about having decoded the DNA of the so-called coronavirus. All this has been allowed to stave off a global panic. All this is true. All this is really in the news. What this is being talked about, it's all really happened. Okay, so none of this part's made up. The real question you have to ask yourself is this story real? And so far, because of a few different hints in here and things that are going on, I give it massive credentials that this is totally real and this is exactly what's going on. All right. For now, yet the situation was worsening with astonishing speed. I am reluctant to reveal too much on this point as it would make it too easy for my enemies to identify me, but we quickly began to implement measures to protect our most senior leaders. If you look at the world news, you will see Xi Jinping, our president, disappeared for approximately 1 week after the outbreak. This is true as well. Before being seen again with the leader of Cambodia. All true. You should know that the person who met with the Cambodia leader was not President Xi Jinping. It was a body double who had for many years been trained to look and sound like our own president. Okay, body doubles are totally real. This is a real thing. All right. President Xi, of course, not careless enough to risk his own death. He is safely encased in a secret bunker underneath these words. Zhonghongyai, the headquarters of the party of Beijing. Nor was he the only leader who was hiding. In fact, I can assure you that over half of all the senior members that are currently being imitated by trained actors who are following instructions given to them via special implants. Do you really think the Prime Minister would risk his life going to Wuhan? All this means that our government has been utterly paralyzed and the functions of the state have been taken over by the military. It became clear to me that our efforts were pointless. Yes, the lockdowns, travel bans, and targeted assassinations of rebellious journalists allowed us to hide the true situation of Wuhan, but I knew this would not last. Once the mass deaths begins to rest in the rest of the world, in our estimation, this should happen within the next week or so, everyone will know the truth. It will become clear that we cannot protect ourselves from the agent. Surgical masks, sanitizers, gloves, nothing can stop it. Nothing except special hazmat masks, but those cannot be produced in anything like sufficient quantities. You, an ordinary person, will never even receive one, let alone a sufficient number to see you through the coming Holocaust. For those of you reading this, therefore, all I can suggest to you is that keep your loved ones close to you. Hug them, tell them what they mean to you. Enjoy the time you have with them. It's just, it is not typical in Chinese culture to express one's feelings in this way, but I have learned the importance of such gestures. I promised my wife that I would show this document to her before I posted it, yet I broke my word. I hear her weep loud. Hoarse sobs in the bedroom, and the keyboard of my laptop is wet with my own tears. Not long ago, we received results of the regular test at part of our priority medical treatment, and we learned that my son had been infected with the agent. The military police had supplied me with a special protective mask, had been giving expired and insufficient masks to my son, masks that senior officials had already worn and then discarded them, ceased to protect them. My own mask, on the other hand, had always been of the necessary quality. I suppose that they decided that my son was of lower priority than me. I suppose that my son could not help them with their cover-up. We had long decided that we would be different. We would be honest with him always. And so when he asked us, we told him the truth. We told him that it was very sick. He asked more, and we told him he would not get better. He continued asking, and we told him that he would die. He is very small, but he was old enough to understand. His terrified wails will haunt me for the rest of my miserable days in this world. Let them come. Let them do to me as they will. I no longer care. All right. And that's the message, okay? And let's talk about this for a second. As of right now, I'm giving the story extreme credentials, okay? Very shortly, we'd find out for sure. But let's look at what we got here. I said that actions speak louder than words. We have never, in the history of the world that we know it, have had over 750 million people quarantined, 10% of the Earth's population, all right? We have satellite imagery of sulfur dioxide in the air, all right? Just today, they just brought in 40 more high-level incinerators, all right? There's probably more that we don't know about. The timing of this break, okay? How severe it actually is. Everything that people say when I talk to post-trippers and stuff like that, them thinking they're going to make it through and all this other stuff, and I say, no, there's not a time like it. Why does the Bible say, why God says, I see every man with his hand in his loin like a woman in travail, all right? Giving birth, all right? Just crying, weeping, totally fearful, all right, of the things coming on the earth. This is the start of the tribulation. Within a year and a half, you got over quarter of the Earth's population dead. It's no joke. It's totally serious. That's why God gives the only time in history a free escape. Knowing Him, giving your life to Him, you get to escape in the rapture, okay? And this is why I talk about it. This is why it's so important. All right, the timing of it. All right, I have talked about how this spring is so lines up with the 73 years on the Jewish calendar. All right, and there's a number of other things, of course, that I've been talking about now for hundreds of videos that point to how close we are, including the Malachi prophecy, the age of the Pope, how they're bringing out the one world religion, how if this is the false prophet, because it lines up not only from Revelation 17 and the Lantern Treaty from 1929, he is the 8th king of the popes. They made him kingship in 1929. He's the 8th one. The 7th did go for a short time, just like the angel says. It was Benedict who quit early. First time it's happened. Also lines up with the Malachi prophecy. There will only be 112 popes and the great judge would judge, Rome would burn. Okay? It's also the 112th. When we know this, when we look at the signs, when we know that it happens in this time, when we take it seriously, the whole thing looks like it's going down, so you'd expect nothing less. What I haven't seen, though, is anything serious enough. All right, really, really grabs you and go, holy crap, that's the most horrific, nightmarish world thing that I wouldn't even want to see on a horror movie until I read this. All right, this is the only thing that actually comes close. This is the starting point of the tribulation. This is how bad it really is. This is so horrific that there is no stopping it. All right, this might be why they have to bring in UFOs and aliens and other things, why they start mandatory chips for people that have been vaccinated, why it's an excuse possibly to kill Christians that go into the tribulation and say, no, we don't want to have anything to do with this, you know. Number of reasons, all right? People are fearful, they'll start blaming it. Oh, the disease is spreading from Christians or whatever else, which you already see doing right now for anti-vaxxer hate and stuff like that, okay? This stuff's happening all the time, all right? So we know that it's real. We know that this is the time to expect it. And then right in the middle of expecting it, a story like this comes out. That's credentials enough right there. That's exactly what I've been expecting the whole time. That's exactly what I've been waiting to hear that would give a locked-in date and show that, hey, time's up. That would go along with God telling me on September 13th last year, like I told you guys already, almost time, all right? Why everything is ramping up more than ever before, why the peace deal just came out and why they're pushing to do it, why there's prophecies that the elections wouldn't go over in Israel until Messiah showed up, or possibly what they're referring to as the Antichrist, all right? Spring rapture time, the year that would be perfect for it, 73 years, it would line up giving 7 years to the 80 years by strength. It would fill the prophecy from Psalms 90, okay? Why God is having me go active in such an urgency that halfway through the month, I still have to get out at the end of the month in this short time. Why? To hit the road, camp out, and warn every single friend and person that I work with that I could possibly talk to one more time about God, all right? Just like I was kind of saying, well, it'd be nice to be able to talk to everybody again. He's making it happen. He's allowing it to happen. I'm going active again, all right? I don't see any of this happening if it wasn't deadly serious, if it wasn't life-threatening, and we didn't have seconds before this whole thing kicked off and the rapture happened. I mean, I got to give it credit, all right? They still don't know what happened to all the dissidents, all right, that left in the beginning. Okay, the 5 million people, this story says they're all dead, all right? Now look at the lockdown rate. Look at what they're doing. Look how serious they're taking. They're talking about the flu. Everybody's in hazmat suits, all right? They got the whole places locked down all over. The whole world knows about it, okay? A coronavirus, a simple flu. Everybody's been saying the whole time they're underreporting. There's something more to this. Why are they taking it so serious? Russia just shut down their border, all right, with China. And every Chinese, they're flying out of the country, okay? Chinatowns all over the countries are crashing because people are so nervous about it. The economies are crashing. They can't keep up with it. What is that line up with the black horse? Is all this stuff really ramping up? No, not just yet. It doesn't kick up until God flips the seals, but it is in the warming phase. It's like lighting the little torch that lights up before you hit the flamethrower button, okay? You get the torch going. This is the little torch, all right? All this stuff is just a little torch. You haven't seen anything yet, and hopefully you don't have to, because I want everybody to escape that they possibly can, all right? Now, what do I think is going to happen, right? I showed you before the quarantine cities in America, right? And the little areas that they have with them where they want to take people. Coincidentally enough, these are also the same nuking locations for World War III, places they want to hit in America that are big cities. I find that very interesting. Now, is this part of a plan or is it an escaped plan, all right? The enemy several times uses things, and it gets flipped right around them. Look at Gog and Magog prophecy in the Bible and other things like that, where they come against Israel and things like that. God flips it, uses their own equipment when they start fighting each other and things like that. Were they planning something? Yes, we already know that they were, and what they said that it was going to happen sometime in 2020 or 2021. They didn't know the fall, or what time. They just knew it was going to be done in a flu season when they planned it. So they plan it, and then all of a sudden, now it's completely out of control. Was it part of the plan? I don't think so. I think this goes more along the lines with they're planning something, but God's in control of the whole thing, and they create the weapon. He's using it against them in their own way. Is it against them? No, but it's kicking the whole thing off. There's lots of Christians in China and stuff like that, and they made it themselves. They made it themselves. God didn't create the virus. Man-made stuff did. All right. And just like the tribulation starts, the first four things, they're physical things. Then it gets into the astronomic things, okay? That planet coming through, asteroids hitting the ocean, taking out 1/3, worldwide earthquakes. And then it starts to get into the paranormal crazy stuff, all right? CERN opens up the portal, those things come out. 5 months, that's taken off the earth, and it stings them like a scorpion and stuff like that. And then the spectral riders come out. By the time you get to the halfway point, from the 200 million man army that comes from those spectral riders or whatever, they take on another 1/3 of the population. You're already looking at like 6/8 or whatever of the population, maybe 5/8 of the population of the earth already killed by the halfway point of the tribulation. And then it moves on to finally it's God's judgments. Now he's turning the oceans to blood and stuff like that. But you can see how they progressively get more renowned into the point where it's like, this isn't even natural anymore. All designed to, hey, repent, turn to God. This is your last chance. And of course, people still shake their fists all the way up to it. This has more credentials to me than anything that I've seen so far, and I believe the story 100%. I think that it's all going to kick out. It's all lining up with what's going on in my life and why the urgency that I'm in all of a sudden and why I'm getting reactivated. It lines up with a lot of other things and questions. We know that the stuff's going on. It shows the severity, why countries are completely shutting out the Chinese, locking borders down and stuff like that. This has never been done before, especially over a flu virus or something simple, all right? Hazmat suits, simple little masks and stuff like that, it's total nonsense, all right? This is the only story that I've seen that is actually giving credentials to the whole thing. And this is my evaluation of it, all right? I think the whole thing's going to kick off. I think it's still lining up with spring. I have no idea when the tribulation is going to start. If it turns out to be summer or spring, it might change things around, and I won't be here to reevaluate the situation because I plan on going to heaven. Whatever happens, God has it in control, and He's going to line up for the last 3 feast days fulfilled at the time that it happens when He comes back. Whether it's there or we go into it, He starts the 1,000-year reign, and then we celebrate those. I'm not sure, but from what I can tell, it'll be more towards the fall. But I mean, only time will tell. It's hard to see, but I do believe the rapture will happen in spring, the way this looking, or early summer. And at this point, maybe it'll happen even faster because I mean, this, if it moves as quick as it's looking right now, this is going to be world changing, and the whole world's going to know about it very soon. It's very interesting. But I wanted to get it out, share it. I want you guys to share this video. All right. I don't know if I ask you guys to do this very often and stuff like that, but right now we're in evaluation stage. We'll see what happens, okay? But wouldn't it be better that everybody knew the severity, the most severe you could possibly think of, which is what it is, what I'm saying right now. This is about as severe as you can possibly get to tribulation, okay? And this being the worst killer ever, death, all right? That you could possibly have. So to know it and at least be able to evaluate, you know what you're working, you know your parameters, instead of saying something that's less and it turning out to be more, okay? I want you guys to all share this in whatever way you can, whether it's saving it, putting it on something, giving it to somebody, sharing it on social media, whatever it is. I want you guys to share it and get it out, and maybe it'll evaluate the whole thing and spread some light on it. But right now it looks pretty legit, and I'd rather get it out, and it's very important. And I definitely feel in my heart that it's important to get it out. So I wanted to talk about it, and I especially wanted to read it because it's another source of the information that can spread. Because I want the truth to spread. I always have. All right, real quick as an add-on, the point I wanted to make about the quarantine cities being nuclear targets is that if this thing gets out of control, like it already looks like it is, where they think they have a plan and then all of a sudden it's yanked out of their hands and it's now being implemented at another time, they might still try to run with it. Since it's already part of the plan, maybe quell it and move it in the way that they want. But if it gets too out of hands, these quarantine cities might literally be the only way to get rid of it. People will be taken to them, and then they start World War III, and in a disguise to cover the whole thing up so you don't have a massive break loose where people find out their governments are totally incompetent and they're the ones that are killing them. You disguise it under World War III, where all the quarantines are, and you hit them with nukes and say that it happened because of World War III, only to clear up later, taking out all the people and hopefully killing off the virus that is already swept out of control if they can get into located areas. This would also speed up World War III. They would have to do it fast, especially if it was a major breakout, and that's one of the points I wanted to get across. Is why it might all happen at once. They literally might do it to disguise it or to cover it up in a way that's the only way they can get it under control and kill it. But then say, oh, it was World War III, and those places were going to get bombed anyways, when really it's part of a cover up. So, anyways, just a little something I wanted to point out. Thank you for the time. God bless, and I'll catch you next time in the Legion. If not, I'll see you in the air. Bye.